You execute your mechanical programming perfectly, yet your quadriceps still trembles and uncontrollably stalls out under heavy resistance. You test your isometric output on a handheld dynamometer to verify the deficit, and the numbers reveal a flat line. Despite 2 straight weeks of strict adherence to your loading program, your strength refuses to climb. Your motor neurons have entered a state of reflex shutdown, effectively cutting the power line before the signal can ever reach the muscle. Standard strength training assumes a functional neurological drive is present to carry the load. When that authorization is missing, adding more weight only reinforces the compensation, making an external override necessary to reach the muscle tissue. The process begins with structural disruption. Whether you are dealing with a tendinopathic defect or recovering from a patellar tendon graft harvest, the joint trauma creates a highly sensitive environment.
The nervous system detects damage instantly. Afferent warning signals travel from the patella up the spinal cord, triggering a defense mechanism. To prevent joint strain, the brain blunts the efferent motor drive. Consequently, large, fast-twitch muscle fibers required for athletic force remain completely dormant. Clinically, this biological breaker switch is known as arthrogenic muscle inhibition, or AMI. AMI creates an immediate safety buffer for the injured tissue, but it guarantees long-term functional weakness by preventing the very activation needed for recovery. Because AMI originates in the central nervous system, no amount of voluntary willpower in the gym can override it. If the brain refuses to authorize the signal, you cannot access the fast-twitch fibers required to rebuild the tendon. Tendons behave like wet concrete during the healing process. They require intense, consistent mechanical tension to properly align and organize their collagen fibers into a strong matrix. This chart shows the cross-sectional area of a healing patellar tendon over time. The data reveals a massive proliferation spike, peaking at the 1-month mark, and securing this larger area mathematically dictates your total quadriceps strength at month 6. This situation creates a direct clinical dilemma. The tendon requires immediate, heavy tension to organize those fibers, but AMI prevents the quadriceps from producing the force necessary to supply that tension. When the brain refuses to authorize the mechanical load, athletes and clinicians introduce an external intervention, high-intensity electrical current. Neuromuscular electrical stimulation forcefully initiates the proliferation phase, driving the exact mechanical tension the tendon needs to heal. During a standard voluntary muscle contraction, your body operates on the size principle. This animation shows the physiological hierarchy of muscle activation. The small, fatigue-persistent motor units at the base fire easily for low-effort tasks. The large, fast-twitch units at the peak only engage when the body demands massive, forceful output. In an AMI-restricted joint, the neurological threshold required to recruit those peak fast-twitch units is biologically walled off. Neuromuscular electrical stimulation bypasses the central nervous system entirely, sending an external electrical wave directly into the tissue. This artificial depolarization completely inverts the size principle. The electrical current instantly grabs the largest, fastest motor units at the top of the hierarchy first, because their thicker nerve axons have a lower threshold for external current. Reversing this hierarchical order requires a specific, non-negotiable protocol known as the Russian protocol.
The exact setup requires a 50 Hz frequency to produce a fused tetanic contraction and a 300 microsecond pulse width. That pulse width ensures the current penetrates the skin to reach the deep, large motor neurons. The cycle runs for 10 seconds on, followed by 50 seconds off. That specific rest interval is mandatory to prevent cumulative cellular fatigue from blunting your recruitment. NMES functions as a targeted intervention to reach the high-threshold fibers your brain is currently shielding. Running this stimulation while sitting completely relaxed is a fatal error. Passive stimulation yields localized muscle growth, but it produces absolutely zero central motor learning. To forge the neuroplastic connections necessary for complex athletic movement, you have to execute an active plus stim approach. The operational directive is precise and clear. You must execute a maximal voluntary isometric contraction, like a heavy quad set or a wall set, at the exact second the NMES unit begins its 10-second active ramp-up.
This creates a direct collision between intention and external force. When the artificial pulse perfectly collides with the brain's voluntary signal at the muscle, it creates a cortical bridge. This active pairing forces the brain to wire into the newly activated fibers. The intense, involuntary gripping sensation serves as objective proof of fast twitch recruitment, signaling that the current is successfully overriding the inhibition. This separates clinical NMES from standard pharmacy TENS units. TENS operates on low intensity, strictly to modulate pain. It lacks the power required to force tetanic adaptation in the muscle. Pairing your aggressive mental intent with an artificial electrical drive translates raw, localized muscle size into coordinated, usable athletic force on the field. We evaluate the efficacy of NEMS through objective metrics. You track your progress weekly using a handheld dynamometer to calculate your limb symmetry index. NEMS remains a mandatory, uncomfortable adjunct in your programming, as long as those LSI numbers stall below your target thresholds. Managing this phase requires you to strictly differentiate between the acceptable discomfort of adaptation and the red flag symptoms of joint distress. A deep, localized pulling or burning sensation inside the muscle belly is acceptable tendon strain. That sensation will cease the exact moment the electrical cycle stops. Conversely, sharp, lingering capsule pain or effusive joint swelling hours after the session indicates unacceptable joint distress. That means the dosage or mechanics need adjustment. High-level rehabilitation demands emotional detachment from the physical discomfort. You rely entirely on your objective dynamometer data and your precise categorization of symptoms. Solving the neurological roadblock during slow, isometric holds directly translates to the extreme kinetic demands of high-velocity sports. A fully restored efferent neural drive allows your quadriceps to safely absorb and store massive amounts of kinetic energy during maximum sprinting and rapid deceleration. With full motor unit recruitment restored, the muscle engages the second your foot plants on the turf, absorbing the impact perfectly without the joint buckling. The intense physical discomfort experienced on the table is simply biological data. It proves the tissue is receiving the load required to organize those collagen fibers. By mastering the parameters of neuromuscular electrical stimulation, you bypass your biological governor and reclaim control over your return to elite performance.